So while our bottle is setting up in the refrigerator, we're gonna go ahead and work on one of our tiers. Now this is actually the center tier of our cake, and I'm going to do a really fun technique with this tier just to give it a little bit of sparkle. I'm going to sugar the sides of this tier. So I'm going to take, this is not a sanding sugar, this is actually what's known as a, like a diamond crystal sugar. So it's a little heavier duty crystal, and this one's like a nice kind of ivory color, and it's really gonna play off of our champagne theme. So what we have here, this is an 8-inch round, and I have it sitting on a cooking sheet, or excuse me, I have it sitting in a baking sheet. And the reason for that is the sugar is going to go everywhere. So if you want to minimize how much of it ends up on your floor, having something with a lip will really help you with that. And this is where we're going to make our royal icing glue. Now I have some royal icing in a piping bag. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the tip off, because it's whether or not it's in the bag isn't really all that important. Now, if you've ever used run sugar for cookies or for making plaques, I know Tammy Utley has done quite a bit with run sugar. It's kind of very similar, the consistency we're looking for. It's a little bit thinner than that. And you really can't have too much. So we're just going to go ahead and put some of our royal icing in our bowl. And we're just going to add water to it. Now, you can measure this out if you want. There's really kind of no recipe to it. We're looking for something that's a little thinner and runnier than Elmer's glue. Now you can also use a spoon to mix this up, but I find just using the brush that I'm going to use to apply it to the cake works just fine, and it's less dishes to do later. Now the reason we're doing this instead of just plain water, because usually when you're adhering anything to fondant, you can just use plain water to do so, is we want this to be a little stronger. You don't want your sugar falling off. It's such a beautiful technique, but if it gets banged too hard and you've only used just water, sometimes it has a tendency to separate from the fondant, and then it's not very pretty. So we're going to try to minimize that as much as possible. Now it looks like we need just a touch more water, and this should be good to go. And this is the consistency we're looking for. Like I said, it's very similar to like white school glue, Elmer's glue, just a little bit thinner. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, this is kind of a wider flat brush, and if you can actually find one even wider than this, all the better. The widest brush you can. Now, the only part we're not really going to be focusing on, you've got to remember, we're still putting another tier on top of this. So you don't want your sugar to go too far in, because it'll cause problems with your tier laying flat. So we're just going to kind of get the top edge and down the sides. And then when we, after we stack our cakes, we're going to pipe some royal icing in there, and we're just going to use a small spoon to get our sugar into those edges. So keep that in mind when you're doing this technique, that you still have to stack on top of it. All right, here we go. And you don't want it, see, you don't want it to be too drippy. You want kind of a thin layer on there. A little bit goes a very long way. And I like to do just about half of the cake at a time. You don't want it to start setting up before you have a chance to really adhere your sugar to it. And make sure you get all the way down to the bottom. And this is why that pan really comes in handy, is so you don't make a mess of your counter or get your sugar all over your countertop and then subsequently your floor.